What was the timeline of the Vietnamization policy? Have you ever wondered how the Vietnamization policy unfolded during the Vietnam War? This policy, initiated by United States President Richard Nixon, aimed to reduce American involvement by shifting combat responsibilities to South Vietnam. Let's break down the timeline of this significant policy. In late 1969, Nixon formally announced Vietnamization. The goal was to gradually withdraw U.S. troops while strengthening the South Vietnamese military. This meant that the South Vietnamese army would take on more combat roles against the communist North Vietnamese forces. Moving into early 1970, the policy gained momentum. The U.S. military began to train and equip South Vietnamese forces more intensively. This included handing over control of certain military operations to South Vietnam. A naval component called accelerated turnover to the Vietnamese was introduced. This involved transferring river and coastal combat craft, along with logistical support, to the South Vietnamese. By spring 1970, South Vietnamese forces, with U.S. backing, launched incursions into Cambodia. These operations aimed to disrupt communist supply lines and protect the Vietnamization process. The goal was to weaken the military infrastructure of the North Vietnamese and Viet Cong. From 1971 to 1972, the withdrawal of U.S. troops continued. South Vietnamese forces took on increasing combat roles. However, communist forces remained active and received support from their allies. During this period, the U.S. intensified air campaigns to pressure North Vietnam into negotiations. The timeline reached a critical point in April 1975. Despite the intentions of Vietnamization to create a stable South Vietnamese defense, the policy ultimately failed. The final offensive by North Vietnamese forces, known as the Ho Chi Minh Campaign, led to the fall of Saigon on April 30, 1975. This marked the end of the Vietnam War and the reunification of Vietnam under communist control. From the perspective of communist forces, Vietnamization represented an acknowledgement of the limits of American power. They viewed it as a strategic opportunity to unify Vietnam under communist rule, which they ultimately achieved. The Vietnamization policy began with a focus on troop withdrawal and strengthening South Vietnam but did not prevent the eventual communist victory in 1975.